All right.
One of my friends was that.
Afternoon, everybody. Just a couple of opening comments. First, I hope you all had a chance to see Secretary Hagel's remarks today at the National POW MIA Recognition Day ceremony out there on the River Terrace. One of the things he talked about was the ongoing transformation of how we account for and recover our missing personnel from past wars, which, as the Secretary said, will become a new Defense Personnel Accounting Agency beginning this January. I'd like to give you just a little more context about our progress in this transformation. Next month, all the different budgets and budget offices will be combined into one. By the end of October, a single streamlined directorate responsible for all external communications and outreach to the families, to the public, to Congress, and other stakeholders will be established. In December, an Armed Forces medical examiner will be named and in place to oversee the scientific operations at DoD's laboratories in Hawaii and in Omaha. As the Secretary said, the new agency will achieve initial operating capability this coming January, and it will continue to reevaluate and refine its processes and reorient its structure over the following 12 months before becoming fully operational in January of 2016. Throughout this process, DoD has been working closely with everyone who has a stake in this new agency and its mission, including families, veterans, service organizations, the Congress, and the employees who will comprise the agency's workforce. We will continue to stay engaged going forward. Even once this new agency is completely established, we must remain committed to continuously improving its operations because, as Secretary Hagel made clear today, those Americans still missing in action deserve nothing less than our constant vigilance and our full effort in working to bring them home. Second, as the President announced on Tuesday, the U.S. government is increasing its assistance to help affected countries deal with the most devastating Ebola outbreak in history. The Defense Department brings unique capabilities and capacity to support our interagency partners, especially the lead federal agency, USAID, as we collectively respond to the outbreak in West Africa. Let me provide you with just a brief update on what DoD is doing to support this effort. Major General Darrell Williams, the U.S. Army Africa Commander, will lead the U.S. military's response, Operation United Assistance. He arrived in Monrovia 2 days ago with a 12-person assessment team. The assessment team is conducting on-the-ground planning and site surveys to construct Ebola treatment units in Liberia. The assessment team is also evaluating what our deployed U.S. military personnel will need in terms of support infrastructure to sustain the operations for up to 6 months or however long U.S. military assistance is required. Major General Williams, along with U.S. Ambassador Deborah Malik, have met with Liberian officials, including President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, to discuss our increased U.S. response to the Ebola crisis and towards several sites where more Ebola treatment units will be constructed. In addition, a C-17 with military handling equipment arrived yesterday. The aircraft offloaded a heavy-duty forklift, a generator, and a crew of 7 military personnel to quickly assess the capacity and payload of the runways at Roberts International Airport. This equipment will help provide general support for our overall whole-of-government response going forward. We anticipate that 2 C-17s will arrive in Liberia this weekend, with approximately 45 additional U.S. military personnel, and they will begin work establishing the command headquarters for General Williams. Currently, program funds approved for the DoD Ebola response are around $30 million. This includes our efforts previously announced, such as the 25-bed deployable hospital, supplies and lab training, diagnostic equipment, and personnel protective equipment. On Tuesday, DoD also requested to reprogram an additional $500 million in fiscal year 2014 overseas contingency funds to provide urgent humanitarian assistance to fight Ebola. This is on top of a previous reprogramming request of $500 million. As such, DoD would be prepared to devote up to $1 billion to Ebola response efforts. We're still working through all the planning process to determine future requirements and resources, and we expect additional personnel and materials to continue flowing to the affected area over the next several weeks and months. With that, I'll take your questions. Justin.
On Ebola, can you help us understand, are any of these troops you're sending over there going to be directly caring for patients affected by the virus? What protection measures are you putting in place to stop the spread to these troops? And again, will they be working directly with any of the patients?
Thanks. right now the effort does not include U.S. military personnel treating Ebola patients. We're going to be in support of other healthcare workers that are experts at doing this. And obviously a key component of moving our troops anywhere, in any situation, is to make sure that we adequately prepare them, train them, and equip them for their own personal protection. And as I mentioned in my opening statement, personal protective equipment is part of the material that we are sending down with them. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that they're informed, they're educated, and they're trained on how to protect themselves from the environment. But there's no intent right now for them to have direct contact with patients. Courtney?
The two C-17s, the 45 additional personnel, where are they coming from? And then when you talk about personal protective equipment, does that include weapons? Are they all going to be armed while they're down there?
I don't know the answer to your first question, and on the second one, let me get back to you as well. This is not there's not a security issue. The danger, if you will, is the disease itself, not security. So there's no intent to put armed troops down there. I can't sit here and tell you that that amongst none of them will be any firearms. So let me get back to a more specific answer, but we aren't introducing armed troops into Liberia. That's not the purpose here. These are logistics personnel, engineers, that kind of thing, to create these units. This isn't a combat mission of any kind. Again, the real threat is the disease itself.
Mexico too.
Yeah.
Well, can you update us on, there was reports of there were about 40 Americans taken out this morning on a U.S. military aircraft. Are there more military aircrafts that are going to be going out today and in the coming days? And how many Americans is DOD prepared to take out, or have you been tasked to take any more?
So earlier this morning, you're right, at the request of the State Department and with Secretary Hagel's approval and that of the government of Mexico, 41 U.S. citizens that were stranded in Cabo San Lucas when Hurricane Odile, during the hurricane, they were flown to Los Angeles International Airport on an Air Force C-130. That is right now the extent of any transportation that we expect for American citizens out of Mexico. I would add that these 41 asked for this transport. They were offered the opportunity and took us up on it. That we don't anticipate a huge-scale evacuation of American citizens from Mexico at this time. We obviously remain postured and have aircraft available should there be additional requests or a need, but right now we don't foresee that. Yeah, Phil.
Admiral, yesterday the President and Secretary Hagel both said they welcome the action by Congress to endorse the $500 million training program for Syrian opposition forces. Right. Now that that's moving, can you give us a sense about what the next couple steps are for this department in starting it up, building the site, and assigning the people who will be doing that work?
Well, you're right, and we are grateful for Congress's action, as you saw the Secretary say last night. So what has to happen now is a process of working closely with the intelligence community and, frankly, with the Saudis on a proper recruiting and vetting program for the moderate opposition. And that work will begin very, very soon. As Chairman Dempsey said in testimony, it's going to take a period of months to work our way through that process. Probably 3 to 5 months is the best estimate before the vetting process is complete. And we know we've got a body of willing, capable partners to work within the Syrian moderate opposition. And then there'll be probably a period of 8 to 12 months of actual training and fielding. So it's going to be a little while before you start to see opposition fighters returning to Syria, trained and capable and ready to take on ISIL inside Syria. But that work will, now that we have the authorization, now that we have the funds that go with it, that work will start immediately.
So is there a base in Saudi Arabia that's been identified? Or is a new one going to be built? Who's going to build it? And will American contractors be involved, or American Army soldiers, or will the Saudis manage that whole end of it?
The facility is existing. So there's no anticipation of construction of any kind of new facility. We're grateful for the support that the Saudis gave us for existing an existing facility, and so there's no need for contractors or anything like that. We'll fall in on a facility that already exists.
Can you tell us where it is? Or what it's called?
No, I'd rather not at this time. I mean, again, we're grateful for Saudi Arabia's help, and I think I just leave it at that. Joe?
Two questions. You mentioned, back to the Ebola thing, you mentioned the number of $1 billion. Is this, could you clarify that, please?
Well, it's two. We asked for 2 reprogramming requests, each of $500 million. So they came separately. When you add it up, it's about $1 billion.
Okay. Back to the Syrian issue, training the moderate Syrian position. Is this force, the Syrian force that should be trained in Saudi Arabia, its mission to fight ISIS, that's what I understand, not the regime?
There's 3 things, really, that we're going to help train and equip the moderate opposition to deal with. One is to defend their own communities and their own citizens, where they live, where they are. So basic defense, community defense. 2, to go after ISIL as well. And then, of course, 3rd, to counter the Assad regime. Yep.
2 things. First, can you tell us what you can about this review that the Secretary is looking at regarding the DoD's connection with the NFL? And also on Ebola, you said that the troops will have no direct contact with patients. Can you tell us anything more about what parameters or restrictions this operation is starting out with, in terms of, will service members there be restricted to their own facilities? Will they be kept entirely out of patient facilities? I mean, what will all that be left up to the discretion of the commander, or are there some ground rules going in on regarding safety?
That's what Major General Williams is going to be working on right now. I mean, he's just now standing up his Joint Task Force headquarters, and he will be working through all the particulars of that. What I'll say just broadly is that it's important to remember the mission. The mission is to do some training, to build these units, and do some logistics, some transports, the movement of materiel. It is not to treat. And General Williams understands those parameters. He knows what his mission is, and he'll make sure that the troops are properly trained themselves and have the protective equipment that they need. But there's no intention right now that they will be interacting with patients or in areas where they would necessarily come into contact with patients. They're not doctors, they're not nurses, they're not trained for that and not equipped for that. That's not part of the mission. So they will be kept in locations where they can do their jobs without coming into contact with patients. As for the particulars, let's let General Williams, he just got there, let him work through, and he'll, I'm sure, have more to say in coming days about exactly how he's going to accomplish that. But that's the goal. It's really important. I mean, we're very good at mission accomplishment. We know what our job is. It's been made very clear to us, and the troops know that as well. And as they flow in, they'll continue to do what they're focused on, what they've been told to do. On the NFL, there is no review. There is no investigation. There is no study being done by the Pentagon on the National Football League or our involvement with the National Football League. Secretary Hagel, just like every leader in this building, is monitoring the situation ongoing with the NFL. We have high expectations of ourselves and our own behavior and conduct, as I think you all know, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard. And we have high expectations of the organizations with whom we partner and with whom we work. What the Secretary has done, given what's been going on inside the National Football League, has simply asked to better understand our interactions with the National Football League. In what ways and to what degree do we partner with them? And you know that we do. I mean, there's community relations events that we do around football games, not unlike and perfectly in keeping with the way we interact with other professional sports leagues. We have been working, and we've talked about this a lot, we've been working with the NFL jointly to better understand concussive injuries, because we're dealing with that after 13 years of war and traumatic brain injury. So there's some parallel efforts going on there. And so I think the Secretary just wants to get a sense of the depth of this and the scope of the interaction. That's all that's going on. It's not a review. Ma'am.
Back to the Islamic State. Since you've mentioned what Saudi Arabia is contributing and talked about having a facility there, President Obama has done that as well. The Saudis, I haven't seen them come out with anything. So in the same vein, what are other countries doing? Because I know that we've been hesitant to announce, but if we're announcing what Saudi Arabia is doing, can't we announce some other coalition involvements as well?
We didn't announce what the Saudis are doing. The Saudis announced what they were willing to do. We have been very careful not to announce the participation and contributions of other nations until or unless they have done so. So,
Officials did announce it after a phone conversation between President Obama and the Saudi king. It was U.S. officials that came out first, and I still haven't seen anything from the Saudis.
well, I don't know how that transpired. And I'm not going to speak up here for another nation. It's my job to speak just for the American military. What I can tell you is the Saudis have offered to contribute a training facility. We're grateful for that. Now we're going to move forward on getting that train and equip mission up. But I think your question gets to this larger issue about this coalition of the willing. There's more than 40 nations involved. Each of them are contributing what they can, given their own capacities and limitations and the desires of their populations. Some are willing to participate in military action. Some are only willing to contribute to humanitarian efforts or resupply efforts. Some are contributing monetary donations of aid. Everybody's doing something different, and that's okay. We're not going to dictate terms to these nations as they sign up to do things. Just as importantly, we're going to respect their right to talk about it in ways that they're comfortable with. So just this morning, for instance, you saw that President Hollande announced that the French had started conducting airstrikes in Iraq. That's their right to do that. We're certainly grateful for that support, obviously, but that's up to each nation to do it. What we are seeing is more and more nations coming into this coalition. Some of them are actually evolving their participation. Early contributors that are now willing to contribute more over time. The French are a great example of that. And I think we're going to continue to see that happen. And this notion that's out there that Arab countries aren't signing up is just false. And we talked about Saudi Arabia. There are other Arab nations who have agreed in writing in the communique out of Jeddah to contribute to action against ISIL. Each will do it in their own way, and each will talk about it in their own way. And again, we're not going to dictate terms to them, and we're not going to announce things for them. Maggie?
I noticed in the E-ring today that Chief of Defense Forces for Uganda, General Wamala, is here. And I'm sure you know there's reports that al-Shabaab is planning an attack in Uganda. So I'm wondering, has that general asked to meet with Defense Secretary Hagel? And if so, is there a plan for the two to speak? And if not, why not?
The Secretary is not planning to meet with the Ugandan Chief of Defense. He was here to meet with Admiral Winnefeld. I'd refer you to the Joint Staff on the scope of that discussion and the agenda items. I don't have anything for you more than that. Barb?
I want to follow up on a couple of different issues, please. First, on the NFL. Given the fact that you do have such an extensive, the U.S. military has such an extensive relationship with the NFL organization, and the White House earlier today said the NFL basically needed to get its act together on domestic violence. Why not speak out against, on this issue? What message might you be sending to military women and military spouses by not speaking more strongly against what's going on, given that the White House has now said they need to get their act together? And I have a follow-up on the follow-up.
Okay. I'm certainly not going to speak for the White House and how they characterized it. Again, I can only speak for Secretary Hagel. We have been crystal clear about our expectations of ourselves and the men and women who serve this department about how they conduct themselves and about the standards that we're going to hold them to when they don't. Crystal clear. And nobody takes issues of violence, sexual assault, more seriously than us. We have more work to do, and we know that. We also have high expectations, as I said, of organizations that we partner with. And so the Secretary is viewing with concern what he is seeing the National Football League go through. That's why he's asking questions about the full scope of our interaction with them. So we need to work that through. We need to answer his questions. And then we'll see where we are. But I'm not going to get ahead of decisions he hasn't made yet and and I'm not, it's not our place at the Pentagon to be casting judgment on private entities outside the building.
But you do say that you have expectations of the organizations you partner
Yeah,
with.
absolutely.
Can you say anything about what the United States military's expectations are then of the NFL?
Our expectations of organizations that we work with are the same that we expect of ourselves, that everybody is going to be treated with dignity and respect, that there's going to be accountability when they're not, and that there'll be a transparency about the efforts. But those are the standards we hold ourselves to.
May I follow up on Ebola very briefly? Okay, every time you answered, you talked about the fact that there is no intent now. You did mention that several times. No intent right now for U.S. troops to be involved in treating Ebola patients. Can you really shut the door to that? Is there some future notion that they might be called upon to do that? And the fact is, even with personal protective gear and everything, how would you know if you might be coming into contact with someone who's developing Ebola or been exposed to it? There certainly is some risk to U.S. troops. But on the treatment question, you qualified it each time.
We're clear-eyed about the risk that we're incurring in standing up this mission down in Liberia and in Africa with this deadly disease. And as I answered to Courtney, the disease itself is a threat. We understand that. We get paid to deal in risk and to manage that and to mitigate it the best we can. It's difficult in any military operation to eliminate it, and the men and women who sign up and serve in the military understand that when they do. The mission right now that General Williams has been assigned is one of engineering and support, logistics. And I would say the word support means a lot to us. We are supporting USAID and the State Department and also the government of Liberia in this particular case. Now, this is not a military-led operation. And so the mission itself, as it's defined, is limited to those areas and not direct medical care of patients. I'm not going to get into hypotheticals about what might or could change over time. We have unique capabilities. We try to stay as ready and prepared across those capabilities as we can. And if there should be a need in the future to change the mission, to modify it somewhat, then we'll have that discussion. But there's no discussion about that right now. Yeah, Tony.
A couple of rank questions, non-NFL questions. $7.5 million, is that still roughly the daily expenditure? That was the expenditure as of August 26th.
Yeah.
The air campaign is ratcheted up to over 3,200 sorties now.
Yeah.
What's the current figure?
I don't have an exact figure for you, Tony. And I know, I get asked this a lot, and we do owe you better clarity on that. Obviously, because the operations have intensified, I think it's fair to say that the estimate by day has increased. I just don't know by how much, and so I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Can you clarify General Allen's role? Is he actively contacting former compatriots in the Anbar province? There's been reports from the region that he's been in contact with Sunni council members. What is his role right now? What level of that? What is he doing right now?
General Allen is serving the State Department in a civilian diplomatic role. And as for his specific activities, I would refer you to the State Department. We don't have visibility on that. We're not. That's really not for us to speak to. He works for Secretary Kerry.
One third quickie. Where are the aircraft in Erbil? When are they going to be placed there, stationed there?
I think you're going to see the aircraft that we talked about getting to Erbil in the very near future. I don't have an exact day for you. I don't think that I would telegraph that even if I did. There's still some sourcing solutions that need to be worked out. Yep. Spence.
On Syria, if it's going to take between 8 and 12 months to field a vetted and effective ground force to take territory away from ISIS, what do you expect airstrikes that occur before then to accomplish?
Well, we're not there yet, so let me just state that right out at the top. But certainly the options of conducting strikes in Syria remains open. And as you know, the president was in Tampa on Wednesday and got briefed on some of those options and some of those plans. What airstrikes would enable us to do is to continue to put pressure on them, particularly the safe havens and sanctuaries that they enjoy in Syria. And I don't want to get into a discussion of targeting here from the podium. I think you can understand why that wouldn't be a good idea. But the idea is to continue to put pressure on them and disrupt their activities, their ability to operate, to fund themselves, to train, to equip, to recruit.
But would you be pushing them away from areas that you can't capitalize on the ground that they've left?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of operations that haven't been conducted yet. I think I'm going to leave it where I did. Yeah, Julian.
This morning, General Odierno citing the Ebola deployment, more rotations in Europe, and the advisors who have gone to Iraq said that it is time to kind of reopen discussion of what is the proper size of the military. Is that something that Secretary Hagel has discussed with his team or is considering, given that the decisions made in the skimmer and in the budget were done before, you know, these three major crises sort of caused more demand for your services around the world? Are you re-looking at the size of the Army?
No. There's no intent right now to reconsider the manpower and end strength requirements that we laid before the Congress when we submitted the 15 budget. Yes, sir.
Admiral, back to the train and equip the Syrian opposition forces. Those 5,000 men that will be trained, will they get this basic military training? Are they getting training on the equipment they're going to receive? Are they trainers themselves? They're going to go back and train their men? I mean,
actually, I think the short answer to your question is all of them is yes. We're going to be training them in basic military skills to create a basic, competent defensive force that can go, as I said, to Joe's question, to defend their citizens, their communities, to go against ISIL, and to also go against the Assad regime. The equipment that will be provided to them will be in keeping with those kinds of missions. It'll be tactical equipment, communications gear, arms, ammunition, the kinds of things that they'll need to do that. And while it's not a train-the-trainers program, we certainly, one outcome of this is we want to develop leaders too. Good moderate opposition military leaders. And when you develop a leader, you develop a trainer, because any good leader is going to be a trainer just by default. So I think there'll be an element of that. We want to develop a good leadership foundation among them. Did I answer your question?
yes. Any details on the tactical weapons they're going to be trained?
No, I'm not at liberty right now to kind of give you the laundry list, but I think it's the kinds of things that you would expect that you would be given to a force with those goals in mind. You know, small arms ammunition, personnel served weapon systems, and you know, basic defensive capabilities as well. And we've said this, that over time, as they get better and more capable, and perhaps as the threat requires, it's possible that more sophisticated weaponry and equipment could be delivered to them. But we just aren't there yet. We're just at the beginning of this. We've got a long way to go, and we know that. Right now, the focus is on a recruiting and vetting process so that we can start to build a core that we can get through this training. Yeah.
Admiral, when was the first request for the $500 million for Ebola?
When was the first request?
You said that there's two requests. There was $500 million, and now we have a second $500 million.
Yeah, it was. I know I talked about it a couple of weeks ago.
Wasn't that merged with an Iraq request too? That wasn't all 500?
It was, you're right. It was Iraq and Ebola. Yeah. You know, I don't have the exact date, Richard, but we can get that to you. It was a couple of weeks ago, but I'll have to get back to you on the exact date.
And could we get the exact dollar figure for how much of both of those is for Ebola?
Yeah, well, certainly, yeah.
And then the second request was last week?
I'm sorry?
The second request, $500 million. You got a total of $1 billion now,
Yeah.
so the second request was last week.
Yeah.
And both are pending before Congress.
Hang on a second. The second request for reprogramming was on Tuesday, this Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday. So both of those requests are pending before Congress.
That's right.
Reprogramming authority.
That is right. That's right. So it's up to $1 billion. But as you rightly pointed out, not all of the first $500 million is devoted to Ebola,
So we should be saying up to $1 billion.
which is what I said in my opening statement. I think I did.
All right, on that same
Wait a
topic-
minute. I think I did.
You said $1 billion. I wrote it
Not
down.
in your opening, you said 500 plus 500 equals $1 billion.
You wrote
That's right, because you know how challenged I am at math. Here's my opening statement. As such, I'll read it again. DoD would be prepared to devote up to $1 billion to Ebola response efforts. So, thank you. It feels good.
Did you say how long those troops are supposed to be there as a part of setting up this?
The initial effort of setting up these treatment units is anticipated to take about 6 months. But I also said that we would certainly stay there as long as required. It could very well go beyond that. The initial estimate is about 6 months.
This is sort of random, but is there a plan to quarantine them afterwards before bringing them back to wherever they're coming from?
Well, we're going to be obviously monitoring their health throughout their mission. I think we'll have a good sense before they come back, you know, how they're doing. I mean, we'll as we always do, we take good care of our troops, and we'll be monitoring their health throughout the process.
What is as long as required? Is the department committed to staying there in a significant capacity until this outbreak is?
Yeah, I know you guys love timelines. I'll tell you, we'll be committed to this mission for as long as it's required, and I can't put a date. I can't put a date certain on that.
What does victory look like in this operation?
The success will be measured by the degree to which we are able to support USAID and the State Department and Liberian officials in particular in combating this disease. As I said, our job is, we are very much in this case, you know, in the military we have a parlance of supported organization and a supporting organization. We are very much a supporting organization in this. So success for us is the degree to which we have adequately supported those who are going to be on the front lines of treating patients. And we will do that for as long as required. The initial estimate of how long it will do to do the equipment and setting up the training sites that we talked about is about 6 months. It could go beyond that, and if it does, we'll be prepared to stay as long as required.
Admiral Kirby, you always have contingency plans. So what is the contingency plan if, unfortunately, any number of troops fall ill to Ebola? Because we have seen that it's been a struggle to even get 1 or 2 victims back to the United States on these isolation chambers on board aircraft. It's a very limited capacity. So what's your plan if troops become ill?
We'll do everything we can to take care of them, Barb. There's no question about that. We know that in this mission, as in so many missions around the world, we are in effect deploying them into harm's way. We're aware of that. They are aware of that. We're going to train. We're going to equip them the best we can. You can never eliminate risk in a military operation. You deal with it. And I can't give you chapter and verse right now. General Williams is setting up his organization right now, but I can tell you that should any of our troops fall ill, we're going to do everything we can to make them better and to get them back to the treatment that they need.
And are troops getting hazard pay on this mission?
I'll have to get back to you on that. Yep. I got time for just one more.
Originally, you had said that you were training the Syrian opposition to go after ISIL and then to counter the Assad regime. I was just wondering if there's a difference between countering and going after in terms of training.
No, I'm just not a great user of verbs. I'm just so if you want me, I can be more precise. I just was thinking about Zorch for a second, but I don't think there's a way I can actually use it in this sentence. We anticipate there are 3 missions for the moderate opposition, and one is to help defend their communities and their local citizens. 2, to take the fight, to battle against, to combat ISIL inside Syria. 3, to struggle against, battle against, combat the Assad regime. Same thing. But we anticipate that those would be the 3 goals for the trained moderate opposition. But we're going to start, and the reason I mentioned the defend the communities first is because that's really where we got to start. We got to get them to a basic level of military capability so that they can go back into Syria, defend their homes, their families, their communities, their neighborhoods. And that's the way you start here. You start to build bubbles of security. that people can then start to live normal lives and not have to live under the threat that they're facing from both terrorist networks like ISIL and the Assad regime itself. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
Is an 8-month training or a 12-month training, is that consistent with Zorch, or is that slower than Zorch?
I think that's slower than Zorch, Julian. Phil, this will be my last one.
Will these guys, when they finish the training program, be Zorching individually back into Syria, or will they Zorch as a unit when all 5,000 of them are done and go together?
That's a great question, Phil. Actually, I think our anticipation is that they will be fielded as units. And that gets to the question I answered to the gentleman earlier about leadership. So one of the things that we know we have to do is help them develop leadership, command and control, basic organizational functions and tasks. So our going in proposition is that they will be trained as and then deployed back to Syria as units, again, to defend their communities and their families, their homes. That's kind of.
Sense of what that'll look like. Is it 30 guys and they'll Zorch back, or is it going to be 300 guys? Where will the unit breakdowns be when the process is done?
I don't think we have that level of specificity right now, but we want to, if you can't, nobody in the military, rather, and speaking just as in the U.S. military, and we all, you wear the uniform individually, but you always serve and deploy and fight as a unit at various levels. All of us do, no matter what uniform we wear. And so I think what your question gets at, like, there's like one encapsulated unit size and that's all we're going to train to. And I think you might be misunderstanding what I mean. I mean, we're going to help train them and teach them about military organization in general and how effective organizational leadership and activities can be affected. And so I can't give you an answer that they're going to go, we're only going to train them to a platoon level and that's it. I think we're working our way through that. But military organizations occur, there's a hierarchical structure, and you learn tactics and operations throughout that whole structure, across the spectrum of unit organization. We're not, and I want to make sure I make it clear that that as we work on this training, and nobody is expecting that we are, especially in this initial tranche, in this first year, that we're going to get to perfection here, or that it is going to, it is in effect the training of an army. This is a moderate opposition. We're trying to give them basic military and defensive capabilities and command and control and organizational effectiveness at a basic level. So I want to make it clear that it's not about bringing in 5,400 of them and turning them into a formal military outfit, if you will, at a large level. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yes, sir.
The reason of my question was that most civilian Syrian people have already served in the army.
Right.
So they have this basic, military training. And that's why I was asking if there would be more trained to the equipment they're going to use, or they want to be...
Absolutely. The moderate opposition is not a monolithic group, as you know. And some may very well have relevant military experience, and I suspect that a large number do not. We're trying to give them basic skills, and certainly we will train them on how to use the equipment that they get, obviously. Some may already be schooled in it. I suspect many will not be, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start with a base level, and we'll do that. They'll be trained in how to use the equipment that they're being provided as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.